will share his experience, strength, and hope for approximately 45 minutes. We ask out of respect for our speaker to please remain seated until he has finished. It is definitely my pleasure to introduce Kevin.
My name's Kevin. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is June 28th, 2001. How's Prescott AA tonight? All right. There's a couple things I want to share. First and foremost, a big round of applause in welcoming Dave and Tamara back to the meeting. Second, I want to thank Mike and the home group members from the Saturday night speaker meeting for having me in tonight, taking a chance there. And then, let's see, what else do I have? And you know what, guys? I spent 30 years drinking and drugging, and I think in those 30 years, I must have killed a couple of brain cells. So I always bring the handy 5 by card with me to remind me and keep me on track. I'll wander. So, I brought my smart water. Yep, I need it. And I want to try something different tonight. You know, because we're always asking the newcomer, who's got 90, identify yourself, who's new. I would like the people with a year or more raise their right hand and hold it up. All right, out of you guys, who stayed sober today? Left hand. Remember, this is what you're going to look like if you go back out. And you know, when I came into AA 20 years ago in Cottonwood, Arizona, I used to see speakers come in, and I was fascinated by speaker meetings. I did a lot of speaker meetings, and these men and women would come into the meetings with an entourage of people that supported them. You know, in my first 4, 5, 6, 7 years, I didn't have an entourage. I would be asked to speak, and I would show up, and I would share, and everything was okay. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I have an entourage. Also, which could be good or bad, my sponsor's here. And some members of my home group. So I always pretty much start the same way. The first time I took a drink, which was in Sedona, Arizona, June of 1970. My mom and my alcoholic stepdad, we lived in Scottsdale, and they got a divorce, and my mom took us 4 kids and moved to Sedona in a little tiny trailer in Rainbow Trailer Park from that house in Scottsdale. It was a culture shock. I played baseball, so I hooked up with the guys that were playing Babe Ruth, and they invited me to a party, which was at the Meadow. And how did you get to the Meadow? By the back road. The Meadow was a place between, if you guys know Oak Creek Canyon, Indian Gardens, and Rainbow Trailer Park. That night, all the kids were there. There was a bonfire, and there was wine and beer. So that was my first drink of alcohol. That bottle of Boone's Farm that was passed around. If you guys remember what that stuff is. I know the old guys do. You know, and about a half a bottle later, I was feeling the effects, and one of my buddies said, "Hey, that Susie over there thinks you're cute. Go sit next to her." And I was terrified. So I had to drink more wine to get that courage. And I got the courage, and I went and sat next to her. And that's the last thing I remember from that evening. Excuse me while I have a drink of my tasty beverage. The next morning, I woke up covered in red dirt, ants, and vomit. The fire was smoldering, and I was the only one there. I knew at 13 years old I was different, and I tried to prove for 30 years that I could drink like a gentleman. It never happened. It never happened. Life was good back then in northern Arizona, small town. But then I got the bug. And once I started drinking, I could not stop. And finally, my mom had it with me a couple years later, and she put me in a foster home in Flagstaff, Arizona. But not a regular foster home. I woke up and I was living in a bunkhouse with a bunch of cowboys on a ranch. And yeah, I took myself up there with me. I took my disease with me. But those old cowboys taught me respect, integrity, how to put a day's work in, what the difference was between a pine tree and an oak tree, all that stuff, which might not be important to y'all, but is important to me. I joined the Marine Corps for an easier way of life. And the cool thing about the Marine Corps, as a 17-year-old, I could drink in the enlisted club legally. I was at home. It was great. I could drink as much as I possibly wanted, which was okay for a bit. But after 4 years in the Marine Corps, instead of getting out as sergeant, I got out of PFC. Why? Because of my alcoholism. Which I still wasn't ready to address because I was having fun. As I fast forward through life, I had good breaks. If I was driving intoxicated and I got pulled over, I'd tell the cop I was an ex-Marine, and he would let me go. That worked for a while. When I was 27, my mom, who was the personnel director of the Northern Arizona Postal Service, said, Kevin, take the civil service test. I said, I don't want to take the civil service test. I don't want a regular job. I'm a drunk. I don't want a regular job. She talked me into taking a test, which was in Sedona. And out of 110 people, and this is kind of the amazing things about us alcoholics, out of 110 people, I had the highest score. And I'll tell you, I was high and drunk that morning, and there was a lot of nicely dressed, smart people there. Why I got the highest score, I have no idea. Photographic memory, whatever. I got the job. And thank God for the Postal Service, because it started going south in the late 80s. And in January of 1992, the United States Postal Service required me to go to treatment down in Chandler, a 30-day place, because they knew I had a problem. And I got my first 30-day chip. I never got a 60-day chip. I wasn't ready. I went to treatment to save my job. That went on for a couple more years. And then, I like to do impossible stuff. And I got fired from the job that's impossible to get fired from. Because I just quit showing up. It just wasn't important. And that started an 8.5-year run that would have made a lot of the old alcoholics proud. I lost everything. I lost my home in Sedona. I lost my freedom. I lost all my money. All the material things that I had gathered up, they all went by the wayside. And in the late 90s, I was living on the Verde River in my van because I sold my house, and I thought, yeah, I'm not homeless. I'm an outdoorsman. I am starting a new way of life. Well, Yavapai County probation doesn't count the mile marker 353 on the Verde River as a physical address. and I had to go see old Judge Anderson again, who told me a year before, I don't want to see you again. We're done. And I got violated, got thrown back in jail. With that date, see Judge Anderson, and I had two prayers. One was, God, please help me or save me. But the most important prayer in that jail cell was, God, please make Judge Anderson sick on my court date. God did not answer that second prayer. And I didn't know it for a couple years. God was listening to that day because he answered that first prayer. I got out of jail, had nowhere to go, and it just happened a little halfway house was opened up in Cottonwood called the Carden House. So I was able to go to the Carden House. I had no money. I was on intense probation, and I was one mistake away from going back to prison for 9 years, because I did a year, in the mid-'90s for a crime. And I knew I had to stay away from my knucklehead buddies, the guys I grew up with that are still using and drinking. How am I going to do that? How am I going to stop drinking after 30 years of successful or unsuccessful drinking? Man, like I said, God took over my life, and I didn't realize it. So when Judge Anderson told me, Mr. Brigham, it's your last chance, one more slip, and I'm throwing the book at you, and you're going to go away for 9 years, I said, where do I sign up? And God directed me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And those old guys at the table. And I want to spend some time talking about the men that saved my life and helped me save my life that first year when I had no hope, no faith that AA would work. I didn't even want to be in AA. So this is their names. Harry the Hiker. Every day is Christmas less. Fireman Phil. M.E.L. Mel. Ray D. the Spaniard. Dick K. and Turtle Tom. You can't make this stuff up. These men are real. Some of them have passed and are at the big AA meeting at the Sky tonight. The ones that did pass died sober. They frickin' died sober. So I had my choice of these gentlemen to guide me. Ray D was the first one that got in the way of my drinking. Ray D was a Spaniard. He was about that tall. He has scoliosis of the spine, which made him about that tall. He was a rock in AA, and he had a gravel voice. And he called me Kid. He said, Kid, you're going to stay after the meeting and participate in the business meeting. And I said, Ray, I've got to go in the van with the guys. I'm at the halfway house. He said, I took care of that thing. And I immediately knew AA had a mafia. And Ray was the Don. So I'm at that business meeting. I had 70 days, most of it in the jail. I've been out of jail for maybe 15 days. A significant event back then, it was right after the planes hit the towers. And life was a little different back then, and it took quite a while for life to return back to normal. But we went to meetings. So next thing I know, I'm sitting next to Ray, I had to, and they needed a greeter and coffee maker. Ray volunteers me, everybody raises their hand, someone hands me the key, and the whole process took about 30 seconds. I got the key. I have to be here next Tuesday to open up the frickin' meeting, or Ray's going to send the AA Mafia after me. Thank God for those men, because a year later, they had to grab the key from me because I didn't want to give it up. I wasn't willing to give up that commitment that saved my life. And in the interim, Out of the crew, I picked Harry the hiker as my sponsor. If you're new, be careful what your sponsor's moniker is, because this old guy kicked my butt from one end of the Verde Valley to the other, hiking. And I was a smoker back then. And it's like, and he would have me go out to his house every Tuesday. I had work crew on Sunday. I worked Monday through Sunday, and I had Sundays and Tuesdays off. Sunday, I had probation work crew. Tuesday was my day that I was going to get in trouble. But Harry had me come out to his ranch in Cornville. He said, come on to the ranch. We'll do a step. Okay. Well, I fixed fence, cut wood, clean the horse bins. I mean, all these chores, fix his plumbing in his kitchen. He had me do all these things, and it'd be like 2 o'clock, and I go, hey, Harry, are we going to do a step? Oh, yeah, come on in the house. Come on in. I look back on those times, priceless, priceless. Because left to my own devices, I'm getting in trouble. And that means drugs and alcohol. Thank you, Harry. Harry's still alive. We still talk. And I'm going to share about this guy because I promised my friend I would. Dick Kay. Dick Kay was a United States Marine from Texas. He was a Korean War veteran, Bronze Star, got sober on February 29th, 1968. He was old school. And he would say two things during the meeting. He would say, now this is how the cow eats the cabbage. Okay, thanks, Dick. And he would also say, stay away from them hairy-legged women. I don't know how it'd go over in today's AA, but back then it worked because it scared the hell out of me. Plus, Harry had me on a very tight leash. No dating. And Harry took the time to work the 12 steps with me. And I'll go back. But after we were done with the 12 steps, which took about 15 months, we did the 12 traditions, every single one. And I said, Harry, why do we have to do the traditions? Because I want you to know how to act in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then when we were done with the traditions, we went through the principles. The whole process took about 2.5 years. Worth its weight in gold. Worth its weight in gold. So going back to Harry and doing my 4-step, he said, we're going to go on a big hike. And on the drive up there, you're going to share your 4-step. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, because back then he was like on a pedestal. I thought he was like the AA God. So he said, be at my house at 5 a.m. I said, that's awful early. Maybe it was 4:30. It was early. So I showed up to his house. We drove and we drove and we drove. This is July 4th, 2002. We drove and we drove, and by then I figured out, well, we're going to the Grand Canyon. I said, hey, Harry, we're going to the Grand Canyon. He goes, yeah, we're going to hike down the bottom of Grand Canyon. And I thought, I really didn't train for this. I had quit smoking. So on the way up there, I shared my 4-step. I did my 5th step with Harry. And he shared some things with me that I went, oh, man, you're not perfect. Okay. So then things went a little sideways. Actually, not really, because it was a beautiful day. In 2002, all the trails were shut down except the Grand Canyon, so there was excessive people on there. And the burros that carry people that can afford to burro down there. And we hiked down there, and it was very nice. Bighorn sheep, condors. I mean, it was beautiful. But then we had to hike back up. About 1/3 of the way, my body broke down, and I'm laying in a trail in the dust. and I'm full of dust and sweat. Harry's sitting on this rock with his ball cap with that frickin' turkey feather, and people are genuinely concerned about me. Mister, are you okay? And Harry was just waving him on. He's fine. He's fine. And then the burros would come by and went, man, I would look good on a burro, and I wouldn't have to hike. He said, don't even think about it. I got back up. He said, you got to get up and you got to walk out of here. I walked, and I saw the ridge, and I went, yeah, okay, there it is. I can do it. Get up to that ridge, look up. There's another frickin' ridge. Another ridge. Broke down again, get back up, get to that ridge, another ridge. And I think 2 more ridges, and I knew I was going to make it when the trail widens. You go through that arch, and the last 100 feet I ran up that trail because that was the first thing I'd accomplished in about 10 frickin' years. And when I got to the top of the trail, and in the Marine Corps I spent a year in Japan, so I say some Japanese words occasionally. There was a Japanese family there, and I ran up to them, and I said, Konnichiwa, doi tasemaste, hi, hayako dozo. And they ran away. They ran. The whole family ran. And Harry said, please don't scare the tourists, Kevin. That first year is so important for me to build that foundation, that strong foundation. Because you guys remember, I went to treatment in 1992 and couldn't get sober in 9 years. I didn't go in and out. I went in, out, that's it. But I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it. And my life was getting very, very bad. There was nobody left, no family. I missed 8 years of my son's life. I went through 3 marriages. There was nothing left. You know, I'm living on a river in a van with charges in 2 counties and old Judge Anderson on my back. Where does it all stop? So I had about 4 months. I was and Harry had me going to a big book study. And since then, I have had a big book study part of my meeting repertoire. Because the big book, this is my owner's manual for living. This big book I got from my first home group in Cottonwood. I did not pay for it because all the members there, remember 2001, the 4th edition came out. So there was a big old stack of 3rd editions that were laying there. And I said, hey, you guys, can I have one of those books? Yeah, take it. So I got one that looked worn, but not too badly beaten up. So like been around a while, you know. I've been around, I got my 3rd edition, I've been around a while. Got 45 days, yeah. So at 4 months, I was just struggling. I had freaking had it with AA. I'd had it with the sayings on the wall. And you lose sight. You lose sight of the jam you're in when you get in that state of mind. When I get up here into the broken thinker, I get up here. Man, there's crime tape and upside down Cadillac on fire and apartment buildings with people using and the alleys full of old couches. This is a bad neighborhood. At 4 months, this guy gets me outside of the meeting. His name was Tom. He had 19 years. And he said, Kevin, you're an angry man. I said, well, not really. I just don't want to be in AA. He said, yeah, you're an angry man. So I recommend that you read this one passage, and then I will see you next week. I said, yeah, okay. Because I remember I had the key. I had to be there. So it's my favorite passage. Page 103, after all, our problems were of our own making. Bottles were only a symbol. Besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything. We have to. I fought anybody. If you told me the sky was blue, I would say, yeah, it's kind of green, you know. So I went home. I read the passage. Nothing changed. I saw Tom the next week, and he said, did you read the passage? And I said, I hear that train a-coming. It's coming around the bend. Okay, just love Johnny Cash. I love Johnny. So He caught me outside the meeting a week later. He said, did you read the passage? I said, yeah, nothing changed. He said, no, you knucklehead. Every time you lose your temper, you get mad, you want to leave AA, you read that passage until you start feeling better. And I did. Every day, multiple times a day, for the next year and a half. I never saw Tom again. I call him one of my AA angels. Just those people that get in there at the right time, that keep you in the game. 7 months sober. I'll talk a little bit about my Turtle Tom. One of the home group members, who just happened to be Turtle Tom's sister, said, I showed up to AA, and no disrespect how anybody's dressed, but I showed up to AA my first year in Old Holy sweats and an Old Holy t-shirt with a big gulp. And those guys used to ask me, Kevin, do you have enough to drink? Yeah, 64 ounces, I think I'll be okay. So Turtle Tom's sister said, you know what, Kevin, something's not right with you. You're off. I want you to go talk to my brother. He lives down in Clarkdale. I said, yeah, okay. Can you go down there Sunday? I said, yeah, I'll go down there Sunday. I'll call him and let him know you're coming. So Sunday came, knocked on the door. This guy opens the door and says, yeah, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I'm Kevin, and I'm here to talk to Tom. And he goes, yeah, what is it about? And I said, well, your sister called you and said you were going to help me today. And he goes, oh, well, come on in. And Tom and I, just like Dr. Bob and Bill W. and so many alcoholics over the years have done, spent the morning drinking coffee at his table. And he talked me off the ledge. I went back to the halfway house and did what I needed to do, not take the left turn to the knucklehead buddy's house. And there's plenty of them over there. I got to share a little bit about it. Every Day is Christmas, Les. It's kind of a unique name. I met Les in Clarkdale. He was a marathon runner. He had over 20 years of sobriety. He was an Army Ranger when he was in the service. When he was discharged, and he was a drunk, when he was discharged, he moved under the Balboa Peach Pier. He lived under the Balboa Peach Pier. And when he got his check every month, he would go out, get a bunch of alcohol, and go back underneath the pier and drink. And that was his life. One time he came out, and some guy was standing there. Hey, man, there's a better way. He goes, yeah, but I'm going to the liquor store. I need to get beer. He said, okay. That guy stood there for the next 3 months and caught Les every time he came out, to let him know there was a better way. Finally, Les said, yeah, okay, I'll give it a try. Went into a military halfway house and got sober. And when I met him, he was running marathons all over the country. The big ones, LA, Boston. So I was having problems keeping up with Harry. And I said, Les, I can't keep up with this 70-year-old man on these hikes he's taken me. I need to quit smoking cigarettes. Can you help me? He said, yeah, no problem. Ask God. Oh, no, here we go again. Ask God. So I asked God. So I'm Les the week later. Les, it didn't work. He said, no, you knucklehead. Every time you smoke a cigarette, every time you get up in the morning, every time you go to sleep at night, ask God that you want to be removed from the addiction of tobacco. Took 4 months. I set him down May 8th, 2002, and have never picked up one since. It was more difficult than quitting the alcohol. But then I was able to keep up with Harry, because Harry had big plans for me for the next 5 years. And Harry's birthday was July 4th. So every year, Harry and I would go to Flagstaff and climb up to the top of Mount Humphreys. And I don't know if you guys have been up to the top. It's a big old freaking mountain, 12,730 feet tall. I've seen the sign on top of the mountain. Another thing I accomplished that I never thought I could. Never thought I could. Let me move on here. Okay. I also learned early on about a recovery bank. Some guy told me one day, "Do you have a recovery bank?" I said, "No, I bank at Chase." He said, "No, a recovery bank. Picture this. You've got a good imagination." I said, "Yeah, I do." Picture this. Every time you go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, put the deposit in the bank. Every time you work with your sponsor's right there, deposit in the bank. Every time you do a step, put in the bank. Every time you go to an AA roundup, in the bank. Because sooner or later, you're going to have to make a withdrawal. Something's going to go sideways in your life, and you're going to have to make a withdrawal, which happened when I was 3.5 years sober. My sister's an addict, and I got a phone call that my niece had asphyxiated herself while my sister was out scoring dope. And all of a sudden, I was in charge of a family that was a total wreck. And the people from Alcoholics Anonymous helped me through that very difficult situation, and I didn't have to drink. They didn't leave me alone for weeks. And I was able to get through that situation. I wanted to help. You know, when I came into recovery, all I wanted to do was help one person. Just one person get what I got. Walk the path that I've been blessed to walk. So I decided to put in to be one of the speakers at the Yavapai County Jail. And even the people in AA laughed at me and said, "Kevin, there's no way they're going to ever let you in that jail without handcuffs on." I went, "Well, let me try." Because with me over the last 20 years, let me try. And I had to do a lot of explaining because back in the 90s, I spent a few years in a motorcycle club. So I had some explaining to do to them to let them know that I'd moved on and I've changed my life. They let me into the jail. The coolest thing about carrying a meeting into the jail, number one, you don't have to dress out in orange. Number two, they let you go in 2 hours, which I found very convenient. So I carried that message into the Yavapai County Jail for 12 years. For 12 years, once a month. And I saw some of my old associates across the table. And they looked at me and go, "Wow, Kevin, you're actually doing this thing." And I said, "And you can do it too. You can do it too." And that was my favorite service commitment ever. And I think I'm still I'm on the list as a reserve or a backup. But life gets busy, life changes. Now, I would like to share a little bit about relationships. So, and why? And I'll be very serious. Why? Because for 20 years, I've been burying people that have not listened to their therapist, that have not listened to their sponsor, and have got into a relationship before they've done the steps, before it's the right time. Before it's the right time. And I'm not saying do this. I always share, this is what happened to me. So I got about a year sober. I'd have an epiphany, and I always would say stuff to Harry, and he'd give me this look like, "Are you freaking crazy?" And I said, "Harry, I think I'm ready to date. He goes, no, you're not. Why would you want to put your ick on somebody else? I said, oh, so does that mean no? So another year went by. I finished the steps. I'm into traditions. Harry, I really think I'm ready to date now. I've got a car. I've got, that I don't live in. I've got a small house in Old Town Cottonwood. I believe I am good dating material. He said no. 6 months, year later, I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And the first 3 relationships I had in recovery were exactly like the relationships I had when I was using. The only difference was they all lasted 6, 9 months, not that long. When they left, they got sick of my stuff, or I got sick of her stuff, who knows. They left. The only difference, I didn't drink. I did not drink. By then, AA was so important to me. I was off probation. AA was my life. AA had become my life. And then the 4th relationship came. I got to go back, I met this gal at a 12-step meeting in Jerome when I had about a year. She had about a year and a half. And she was beautiful. She had long blonde hair, big blue eyes, $1 million smile. Man, I wonder if she knows that I'm the cat's meow. Or at least the bow of the wow. She would not give me the time of day, and she was wearing a watch. And then I didn't see her for several years. And then I was at a motorcycle event in Camp Verde, and she saw my buddy's T-shirt. He was wearing a program T-shirt, and she walked across the parking lot and said, "Hi, do you remember me?" I said, "Yeah, I remember you. I like you." I didn't say that. I thought that. And my buddies are going, yeah, come on, Kevin. I got her phone number that day. She happens to be sitting right here tonight. Yeah, but if that was the rest of the story, that would be way too easy, man. But I'm a drunk. And she had been to Al-Anon. Screwed everything up. I met a gal I couldn't play. Couldn't manipulate. She had boundaries. What are boundaries? Come on, let me run rampant over you, So we did start dating. She lived here. I lived over there. We saw each other on the weekends. We fell in love. We got engaged. And then circumstances dictated that I moved to Prescott. She had a better job, so rented my house out, moved in together. A week later, we hate each other. Plus, my big old black dog took a dump in the middle of her living room. It was not good. And I'm thinking, man, here we go again. I thought this was the one. And really, she is the one. However, I had more work to do on me. And fortunately, my old home group, the Humboldt Men's Stag out in Humboldt, a bunch of good men, one of my buddies, door gunner Tom, Vietnam vet, over 20 years of sober, said, "You know what, Kevin? You're mentally ill." Well, you're not a doctor. However, you're a Vietnam vet. Okay, you got street cred. Why don't you go to the VA and get some help? And I did. I spent 14 months in outpatient therapy because I had a very violent childhood. My stepdad beat the crap out of me for 7 years. I couldn't wait till he was gone. And I didn't do that work doing the steps. I needed to do that work. I had 9 years sober at that time, and and my wife Lois, she attended one of the sessions. I was living in a house my brother owned because we split up. I was living in a house in Chino Valley that my brother owned. He said, help me fix up the house. You can live there for free. And, you know, I moved out to Chino Valley, and there's my dog looking at me, and I went, man, AA sure sucks. Blame it on AA, you know, instead of taking responsibility for my own actions, blame it on AA. But I've done the 5 things. I've always done the 5 things that have kept me sober. God, higher power, sponsor, sitting right there, giving me the eye right now. He's tough as nails. He knows me. Steps. Currently, I'm working on my 8th step amends. It's the 6th time I've done the steps in the last 20 years. Home group. My home group is the Prescott Valley Thursday night men's stag. I love that group. And be of service. Be of service. I just picked up a small service commitment from that group. So I'm doing the 5 things. And we managed to get back together. We were disengaged, and then we got re-engaged. And then we got married, and this is an important statement right here. May 10th, 2014, I remembered we got married. We had over 1,000 years of sobriety at our wedding, at a reception. We got married at our house. We had the reception at the Elks Lodge in Prescott Valley. There was over 1,000 years of sobriety there that day. And then we went on a honeymoon. This is my 4th wife. I'd never been on a honeymoon. The honeymoon to me was going to the Denny's down in Cottonwood and have dinner. That was the other honeymoons. We went to Alaska for 2 weeks and on a cruise. I didn't think I'd ever go on a cruise. I don't even like boats. If I'd have liked boats, I'd have joined the Navy. I was in the Marine Corps. And it was wonderful. 2 weeks, wonderful. And God bless my wife, you know, and Al-Anon, because she said, you knucklehead, you better be on your best behavior. You better be on your best behavior, which I was. It was a wonderful honeymoon. I remember when I was in my 20s and 30s and my buddies would tell me on the job site or whatever, I'm in a marriage that works. What is that? Because that gal that I'm married to ain't working, or this whole thing's not working. And I got to tell you guys, all the girls I went out with, they always got a leather jacket and a used car if they came to live with me. It was part of the deal. It was a package deal. The used car came in handy when it was time to leave. So when people say I'm in a marriage that works, what is that? So at 64 years old, I turned 65 August 16th, the day Elvis died. I'm in a marriage that works. I am in a marriage that works. My wife has been sober 6.5 months longer than me, which is very good. I don't work her program. She does not work my program. I'm not a marriage counselor. My sponsor is not a marriage counselor. My sponsor is my sponsor. I want to close with a couple different things. January 2018, actually, I was going to Sturgis August 2017. I'd never been there. I was going no matter what. I had the bike, I had the money. A couple people that were going with me backed off, so I was going. And my wife said, go, I don't care, just call me in the morning, call me at night. And she said, how are you going to get there? And I said, well, I'm going to go north until I see Wyoming, and then I'm going to take right turn until I get into South Dakota, and then I'll ask somebody where it's at. She said, oh, no, you're not. Oh, no, you're not. So she made me plan this whole trip out, and so I was safe and all that. When I got back from Sturgis, I had a lump on my neck. And I thought, man, maybe I pulled a muscle working out. Maybe it's a cyst. Long story short, they did a biopsy. It was cancer. It was cancer. And thank God for the VA and my medical insurance with the VA. In March, I had the tumor removed. My wife just happened to be on vacation that week because the surgery was delayed for a week, so she was in Hawaii, and I needed a ride to Phoenix. I needed an alcoholic to take me down to Phoenix. I picked that guy right there with the tie. He took me down there in this shiny Chevy truck, and we had a good time. And I said, John, let me tell you how to get to the Deer Valley Hospital. And he goes, yeah, you don't have to tell me that. Well, he's from Phoenix. He probably knows. So we get to the Deer Valley Hospital. He said, see that little parapet wall right there? I said, yeah. I used to drink behind that wall. Oh, okay, I got the right guy. John, bless his freaking heart, stayed with me that whole day. When I was ready to go for surgery, and the doctor had a purple Sharpie and said, where's the tumor? I said, well, this is not very high tech. I said, it's right there. So he drew a line, and I looked over at John. I said, is it very big? He goes, oh, no, not big, about 16 inches. John stayed with me that whole day until I got out of the recovery room and got my room. I'm forever blessed. My sponsor came and picked me up 2 days later. But that wasn't the whole thing. When I got diagnosed, I was standing in a parking lot going, man, I've got 16 years of sobriety, and now I'm going to die. The doctor didn't say that. The doctor said, we're going to get a plan. You're going to probably have to have surgery, chemo, and radiation. My broken thinker said, Kevin, you're going to die. Go drink. And I haven't done this but a couple times in the last 20 years, but it was time to look up at the sky and say, all right, God, now what? And he said, call 3 people who are in recovery that are cancer survivors and drive north. And that's what I did. And those 3 people answered their phone and said, we will be part of your cancer team. 4th call, my sponsor, who said, you ain't gonna die, we've got more motorcycle riding to do. 5th call, my wife. When I made that 5th call, I was 2 blocks from my house. 2 blocks from my house. I got through that moment without drinking or drugging. I don't have to stay sober for the rest of my life. I just got to stay sober today. And one of those people that answered the phone that day was the only guy who believed in me, and I have no problem saying his name. The only guy who believed in me 20 years ago, because he was a probation officer, and I was at probation orientation. First time ever, I said, as soon as this thing's over, I'm getting the hell out of here. And he was sitting on a desk, and he had rock music playing, and he captured my attention because he was in recovery. So I stayed after the group and talked to this man. And he was my second call that day because he's always been in my corner. And that man is John Morris. And John Morris today is the chief probation officer of Yavapai County. John Morris married Lois and I in 2014. He's a dear friend. I just needed one guy to believe in me, and he was that guy. So I have a huge responsibility to everybody in this room to stay sober, one day at a time, just one day at a time. So I think I'm pretty much out of time, John. Okay, thank you, sir. So I got a couple of things that I want to read to you guys. The first is from Winston Churchill. We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. By what we give. And the next is Danny T. who says that at the end of his documentary, Champion. There's only two kinds of people in the world: those who are taking up space and those who are giving back. And I want to be one of those that are giving back. Thanks for letting me share. Okay.
Awesome. Let's thank our speaker one more time.